Okay, we are live on Facebook. Welcome everyone to Warrior Women in Business episode 24. The last couple of episodes have been very deep, covering some very serious subjects related to this stay-at-home isolation in New York City. We've had some wonderful guests on from the mayor's office, from New York City Mental Health and Hygiene. And today's episode, we're taking a big curve, a 360. I'm super excited about today's topic because today's topic is all about having female entrepreneurs take action in their businesses, even during this pandemic. So again, my name is Jasmine Sandler. For those of you who don't know me, I've been helping through my business, Warrior Women in Business and JS Media, women, primarily female entrepreneurs and executives, build their businesses and get out there as speakers, authors, and really grow their business. My focus and my company's focus is on digital marketing and branding. So I'll be covering that slice today. I have a wonderful panel with me that represents everything from operations to business finance to personal finance. So we're going to get right into it today. I just want to introduce who my panelists are. And then also just as a heads up, in Facebook, we're going to be doing, as we always do, a 10-minute Q&A at the end, and we're going to be providing some freebies. So with all this being said, I guess I'm just going to start by introducing the panelists. So I have Jennifer Dorre. Jen, if you want to wave to the camera, she looks beautiful and is amazing. And so Jen and I have been working together for a little while now. I really trust her with my clients to help them with the things that I am just not great at, which is operations. So Jen is an operations and turnaround specialist. She has a corporate background. She also does work for nonprofits. She's wonderful, and she's going to talk all about, the importance of having a strong structure to your business and how to build out your business in an effective way. And then I have Molly Heglund. Molly, if you want to wave. So Molly and I just were recently introduced. She's also equally as great. And her background, she's recently an entrepreneur, but she has a very strong corporate and retail background, and she can come into a business and help with financial optimization. And she's actually been teaching me a lot of buzzwords in the world of financial projection. So if you're a female startup, you really actually, with these two, you definitely want to take notes today. And then I have Susan Diamond. Susan, if you could also wave. So Susan and I recently connected because she just struck me on what she's doing to help women in finance. And it's also, we kind of equally share that passion about helping women financial advisors get the attention that they need. So Susan has a pretty cool term, financial social worker. She's a financial planner to struggling female startups. So thank you for coming on, Susan. So I want to get right into the questions now. We have a lot to talk about. So if you all ladies want to go on unmute, I'm going to go around the panel. I'm going to ask some questions that all of us are going to answer. And then there's some that are strictly finance and ops where I'm going to go and actually take some notes today. So I'm going to start with my first question, which is, it's a really tough time. I mean, we can't disguise it, right? Everyone is struggling, from the 30 million people that have filed for unemployment, okay, to the business, all these small businesses that are just getting shut down. Whether it's a physical store that you have or you have a service-based business. It's a really tough time for so many reasons, because even I have found, even if people have money, they don't want to spend it because they're in survival mode. So my first question is really around for the female business owners that are listening and watching today, right? That are experiencing these tremendous losses to their bottom line. What words of wisdom can we give them to get through this time? So I'm just going to start because I'm the marketing person here, and I'm going to start. And I actually think this is a good time for anyone that's a female startup or a struggling business owner to get their marketing in gear and at least get it together. So, my expertise, I mean, if you call it that, like people call me expert, but I don't go that way. So what I've been doing for a long time, let's just put it that way, is really helping to guide business owners in the right direction related to their brand. So my advice would be to take a look at your brand today, okay? Is the everything from the coloration, the messaging, what channels you're hitting, what do you have out there right now that is your brand, and what is working and what is not working? Because this is actually a really good time to build your brand. So I'm going to stop with that, and I'm going to go right to Jen to get her advice on what can people do right now from a operational or looking at growth of their business perspective.
Yeah, so to dovetail on what you said, Jasmine, I think you're right. Getting clear on your brand is really smart. I've sat on a lot of calls recently, restart seminars, and they're all saying the same thing. It's time for businesses to re-examine their purpose, their reason for being. So it's a great time right now to say, why does my business exist in the first place? And make sure you're getting crystal clear on that, because then you're going to be able to align your focus, priorities, and resources on that. And your short-term priorities right now need to replace your long-term plans. That's okay. Think about it. No one has the time or resources or even insight into this new normal that we keep talking about to begin realistically crafting, let alone executing long-term plans. So the one bonus of this situation is that everyone's working with the same unknown, and we've leveled the playing field. So it's also okay to scrap plans that no longer make sense. You don't want to throw limited resources against bad ideas. So the key is that the companies that are going to survive this and thrive are the ones that are going to be flexible. Agility is going to be that new buzzword out there. And frankly, women and entrepreneurs are natural at being agile. So just make sure to keep your priorities simple, keep them minimal, no more than 2 or 3 to begin with. In fact, the word priority was intended to be a singular priority, the priority. And you know, the way I say it is we're all trying to eat an elephant here. So the best way to do that is one bite at a time.
Oh, I love it. I love that you talked about it. It's so important. Thank you, Jen. I'm going to move over to Molly Heglund.
Yeah, even to kind of piggyback off of what Jen was saying, re-examining your business and making sure you understand its purpose. And then for both service and product-based companies, from a financial standpoint, it's a good time to rethink kind of what are your expenses, really diving into the buckets of variable versus fixed and figuring out ways you can keep the lights on while minimizing some of those costs. So what are the nice to haves and what are the must haves? In understanding that you may have to give and take a little bit right now, but you're not completely walking away from one of those expenses, you're just putting it on pause. So whether that's kind of a relationship with a certain like marketing team that's doing stuff for you, or how much you're spending on creative for your website or your social media, like where are there places too that you can take that into your own hands? Like what have you kind of learned along the way, and how can you leverage your own skill set that you may have to manage those expenses? And then from a top line revenue standpoint, I think it's a great opportunity to think about where do you start potentially bundling services and or products. So it's one of those where it's easiest to kind of piggyback or to leverage your existing customer base right now than to go out and acquire new customers. That costs more money. So with your existing customers, where can you bundle services? Where can you offer kind of 2 services with a potential discount? It's also a really good time to create partnerships. What is there another business out there in your community that you guys could come together and find some sort of bundling service to offer your customers a discount where it's actually benefiting everyone involved? This is like a great opportunity. And also if you're selling physical products, like how do you create bundle sets to kind of maximize that potential with an existing customer? So kind of looking at it from your revenue and your expense streams, just like being creative and flexible in how you're examining those, but really spending the time to examine them. I think sometimes people get in the habit of thinking they spend X amount of money on something, and then when they really start looking at the receipts or looking into kind of cash flow, it's completely different. And so taking that time to really sit down and examine it is good to do right now.
Now, I completely agree with you. And one thing I'd like to add, I love that. So I hope everyone is taking notes, these geniuses on. No, I'm being serious. Is you talked about the partnerships, and you know the work that I've been doing for a million years is getting female startups to grow, and they don't have an audience when they start. So that's part of marketing too, right? And exactly. Because everyone is struggling, guess what's going to happen? If you reach out to others, especially other female entrepreneurs that you're supporting them, they're supporting you, and you might be able to double your audience. So, all right, now I want to get to what I have been focused on the last week, which is personal finances a little bit, and how business finances and personal finances come together, and what you're seeing, Susan, with how can we help each other? How can you help yourself right now with what's going on in your finances?
Well, I think one of the things I'm going to quote Warren Buffett. He just recently said is that, fear is the most contagious disease that you can imagine. So I know many of the clients that I've been talking to, and this is totally understandable, but we've kind of triggered that fear-based response, or what we probably all know as our fight or flight. And when this happens, kind of our rational minds kind of get pushed aside, and our emotions then tend to predominate. So what we have to be doing is we have to be thinking about, okay, it's okay to be uncomfortable, because when we're uncomfortable, we also have to realize that we can't make good decisions from like a panic mode. So we have to recognize that, we can't control the virus. We can't control the economy.
Yeah.
But what we do need to focus on is what we can control, which is some of the things that were just mentioned by Jen and Molly. So I look on the money side, whether it's business or personal, it's taking that deep dive into your expenses, or if it's your business, your cash flow, and, looking at where, your current spending is going, and considering, which or some expenses that could be avoided. So, and again, it goes back to what Molly was saying, are you spending excess on marketing or rent, or, what's the size of your company? Are there areas that are reducible without impacting the quality of your business? I know that a lot of utility companies are working with people in terms of bill paying and slowing that down. If you have business insurance, have you checked that out to see if there's an aspect of it that can help you through this situation? But the bottom line is kind of knowing how long your cash is going to last, right? And we should be looking at that, at least for the month. And what cash can you access? Do you have an emergency fund? I know we mentioned that earlier. I talked to somebody last week and they were like, well, I'm not sure if I want to use my emergency fund. And I'm like, well, this is exactly what it's for. This is the time to use your emergency fund. So once you've kind of established and know what your cash flow for the month is, then you can kind of know what you need to do to kind of prepare to extend, to maintain operations. And we know right now, I think one of the things that we can control is we can expand our knowledge sphere in terms of what's available out there to us. We know there's the Paycheck Protection Program, which actually ran out of funds, but there's now another stimulus package with also the healthcare enhancement with it. The Chamber of Commerce are being really helpful and have resources. The Small Business Administrations, kind of just knowing, I think pretty much online and Googling, there's a lot of information out there just in terms of loans for women. I know Facebook are even doing a small grant for small businesses. They're doing like a grant program. So it's really, taking a look at, where you can what are the resources and how can you access some of those that can help you extend and maintain operations.
Okay, great. Yeah. You know what I noticed? So I've been putting out a few things like sometimes it's confusing to business owners to know where to go to get help. And I've been doing work with the Women's Business Center in New York and Florida for a while. So the BOC, the Women's BOC, if you look that up online, please, they are very, very helpful. And also talking to your bank, because most of the banks are lenders with the SBA. So if you don't know what to do, just asking the bank, I have found anyway in the last week, that they at least can guide you in the right direction, because it can be really confusing. So thank you, Susan. My next question is not for the women that have been doing it a long time, but for the newbies. So as I mentioned up front, so I've been a business owner for 15 years. I used to be in corporate. I have been an employee. I've been an entrepreneur. I know both sides of the fence very well. So a lot of people right now are thinking, hey, you know what? This is a time to explore my passion or my idea. So you know what? I'm just going to take, to Susan's point, maybe my emergency fund or a piece of it. And I really believe in myself, because that's what Warrior Women in Business is about. And I'm going to go out there and start a business, right? So there's so much you need to know to do that. And in this time, I think you also have to be equally as cautious as we're all just talking about. So I want to go around and ask you each, what's your advice? And I'm going to give my little 2 cents to a brand new startup. Either she's self-funded, or maybe she has a rich partner, I don't know, or maybe she has a bank loan. I mean, some people are lucky, but anyway, so what advice would you have to somebody who's ready now to start? So I'm going to start and just give my little, and then I'm going to go to Jen, my little 2 cents. So if you've either lost your job, or I know actually a lot of people that have left their jobs, which is interesting, because they want to do something bigger and grander. So from a branding, marketing standpoint, the one small piece of advice to start with is start thinking about and looking at and validating the demand for your type of business. I think that honestly, that's like numero uno. So if you have an idea, like I'm going to have the next, I don't know, Facebook, let's say, because I've had a lot of those clients I've worked with that think they have that, and it's fine. So I have the next idea for X. Okay, that's okay. So you want to do your research. That's the first place to start. It could cost you nothing if you know how to do it well, right? Use it. There's so many tools online right now. Use it. Do your research to see, is there market demand for the product or service that I want to start? By looking online, looking at social networks, the groups within those networks, asking people that you know, going out and looking at competitors and seeing how they do it, and starting to build out, if there's market demand, how I'm going to be different yet better. Like, just start with the planning. And the planning, like Jen and I had mentioned, right, this is a perfect time to plan and strategize. That's the first thing that you do, and put it on paper. And then when you come out of this, you're going to be well ahead of a lot of people that just start businesses on intuition or impulse, and they don't have it down on paper. So Jen, I want to hear from you.
Well, I'm excited. Am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. Sorry. Technology. Well, I'm excited to hear you say it, put it on paper, because it means that I'm influencing you now too. So like Jasmine said, I'm a huge fan of lists and envisioning end state first. So what I would do is I would say, where do you see yourself a year from now? What would success look like? What would it feel like? And by articulating it, you're going to make it concrete and allow it to start taking form. And then you just use the same logic you use to approach any new tasks. What are the first 2 to 3 things you need to do to start your journey? Define your purpose so you have your focus. So like Jasmine said, you know, what is your business differentiator? What is your reason for being? And then determine the couple tasks you need to just get started. Make your checklist and then just start ticking those things off. There's genius in just starting sometimes. So I would say just get moving. You can reinvent, pivot as you go. And once you create some momentum, it's going to amplify from there. To what Susan said earlier, you're going to feel more in control of your situation, and you might even start to get a little excited about your possibilities. And then you're going to put some positive energy out there, and there's something about that positive energy that attracts opportunity back. And I would also say, do not be afraid to tell people what you're doing. It makes you accountable. It plants the seed with them, and then you never know where those conversations lead. My first 3 gigs were based on random conversations I had with folks in my network when I couldn't even see around that corner. So write it down, get straight on what your differentiator is, and tell people you're doing it.
Love it. Molly, what do you have to say?
I'm going to follow on with what both you, Jasmine, and Jen said. Starting with that strong business plan, like, have you really thought through what the demand is? Who is your customer? Has that customer changed in what their needs or desires are going to be based on what we're going through right now? And are there going to be cultural or behavioral changes that start happening that you have to think about now? I think in terms of making sure you're thinking about your business plan holistically, that talking to individuals, your former colleagues, your friends and family, former professors, like really getting it out there and not being afraid to talk about it, because that's how you're going to also see around some of those corners. People will have ideas or be able to connect you with someone else who is, has a background in what you want to ultimately do, or can provide kind of a service that will support what you're doing. So I think it's that piece of like, don't be afraid to talk about it is really important. I think sometimes you can get in your head and you start spinning and you're just like, oh, it's such a leap of faith. And then once you start actually communicating it, it also helps you build a stronger business plan. It helps you kind of narrow down what your focus is going to be. And then you are able to start leveraging that network, even on LinkedIn. I think there are so many people on LinkedIn right now, just like reaching out saying, hey, I've lost my job and I'm interested in being in marketing still, and this is what I want to do. And if you're, starting out a business, like, it's a great time to say, hey, like, I don't have a lot to offer, but I'm starting this business, and like, can I pick your brain, and then we can ultimately work together. I think people are going to just be more open to embracing the community that we have and the skill sets that people have. And it's not going to, there's not going to be any like barriers. People want to engage, they want to communicate, they want to help others. It's bringing out kind of this new passion in people to also support the mom and pop shops and the entrepreneurs out there. I think because communities are going to start changing, neighborhoods are going to start changing, and they don't want to lose their identity. So I know personally, like, I want to support what's in my neighborhood, because that's why I feel like I belong here. And so you're going to find people who are like, I want to support your business idea and I want to help you right now. But you're not going to get that unless you talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I like that you talk about the neighborhood, right? Everybody is inevitably defined by their neighborhood or where they're from initially. And, it is changing the way that people think about their community. So I'm glad you talked about that. One point before I get to Susan is both of you are talking about, talking to others about your idea. One thing that will not hurt you, and I definitely recommend, and a lot of lawyers are being so gracious right now, talk with a lawyer. Even just an initial conversation with a business lawyer, super smart. Please do it before you go out and do something. It just help you. It'll give you awesome ideas. I just had to say that. Okay, Susan, go ahead.
Yeah. I love the lists. I think it's a woman's thing as well, isn't it? I'm always, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's like, oh, I've got to put that on the list. It's like, so I think that's great. And I'm a big proponent of vision boards. I think that they're great. And I think that's a good time. This is a great time to create a vision board as well, if you're at home and you don't have all the kids to take care of. That's for sure. But I mean, it's definitely a leap of faith, that's for sure, right? But there is this tremendous opportunity right now that exists, and many of the largest companies in the world right now were built out of recessions and hard economic times because their leaders were innovators. Mm-hmm. I think out of 2008, 2009, more millionaires came out of that era than prior to it. And I think, just to, again, to reiterate, we're in a digital era, right? So we have a lot of resources available to us. So with a lot of hard work, many businesses can be started with little upfront cost. But what I would say is, if you do have the overhead that you need to get started, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your dependents first. So when I talk about the emergency fund, from my perspective, you need to make sure that typically we would say, have anywhere between 3 and 6 months in terms of covering expenses in normal times. And right now, we just don't know how long this is going to last and the fallout. So I would definitely say make sure you have 6 months worth of expenses. I should say your emergency fund has enough money to cover 6 months worth of expenses. So if you have that, then you're in a position to go take advantage of this being a real opportunity for you to be innovative and create a business.
Yeah, I love that. I was talking to my financial advisor this morning just exactly about that. And I said, I think you need to have 6 months put away. So excellent advice from all of you. So I actually want to get into it. That kind of dovetails exactly into my next question. So all of us pretty much run our own business, some longer than others, some are more, just focused on selling. But so since we're all entrepreneurs, I'd love to hear your experience on what it was like to start out and what you have learned. I'm going to start with mine because I'm a business owner. I love what you said, Susan. It got me excited that there are millionaires that came out of the demise of 2008. Because I'm waiting for that day. But so I want to talk about I'll just quickly talk about my history as an entrepreneur. So I had this very cushy job at IBM, and I was a sales director in the area of technology around 2001, as we all remember, a very, very terrible time. So I was right there at the heart of where 9/11 happened, physically saw that happen in front of me, it changed my entire life. So after that happened, my entire department was laid off. So I took my savings and I started a business, and I started a social network, and I didn't believe in myself from an operational finance standpoint. So I found a consultant who ended up, and I always tell people a story, who ended up bankrupting me, but it's okay because I learned so much. It's insane from that experience. So I started and sold a social network at a couple $100,000 loss. But from that experience, I really catapulted my career because I built it from the ground up with almost no support. So not only do I understand and have done everything, when I talk about everything, designing websites, coding, design, writing, not like I want to do it now, but my team could do that. But, I learned all of that really hard stuff, but I also learned what it was like to be accountable as a business owner. I remember going into paying my vendors because my business partner took off when we failed. And, being accountable, following up with people, understanding the importance of relationships, standing by your brand for the long term. I've taken these things forward through all my businesses and through Warrior Women in Business. And I think, you only continue to get better if you learn from your mistakes, learn from your failures, and even learn from your successes. So, Jen, go ahead.
Similar situation. I had worked in corporate for 25 years and I have that safety net. And in 2017, I was a victim of what they were calling the retail apocalypse, and I lost my job. And I thought I would get hired very quickly, and I did not. I ended up being out of work for 11 months. So during that time, I started my own business based on advice from some coworkers who said, what you do would be really valuable as a consultant. You might want to look into that. And it was terrifying, but it was also a means to an end. And I had absolutely nothing to lose at that point in time. And my husband was a big cheerleader. He said to me, he's like, why wouldn't you bet on yourself? Aww. So it kind of was like, oh yeah, why wouldn't I? And once, the safety net had kind of gotten ripped out from under me, and I had no choice but to bet on myself, I did. And it was terrifying. And I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I asked questions. And to Jasmine's point, she didn't feel like she knew what she was doing operationally and financially. I didn't know what I was doing marketing wise. So that's how I ended up connecting with Jasmine, and she helped me build a website and a digital presence and all of that. And then if I had very specific questions on finance, I had friends that were in finance that could help me with that. And it's just, again, I just got started doing it. So There's freedom in it. There's freedom in betting on yourself because you know you're going to work really hard for yourself. And I think it's okay to be afraid, but don't let the fear paralyze you. Let it exhilarate you. As we know, anything worth doing isn't easy. So, you know, you've got good instincts. Use those instincts. Take it a day at a time. The fact that you have already expressed this desire to do something new speaks to your courage and your tolerance for risk and your resilience already. You just apply your gut instincts. You take the same practical measures that you used to in your day-to-day job, and go for it. The scariest part's the first step. After that, it's one foot in front of the other.
I love it. Molly.
Yeah, so I am the newest of the team in starting my business. I actually started it in January of this year. So I had been in corporate retail for about 15, 16 years. I had been pondering for a little over a year, like starting my own business and moving into the consulting world. I was afraid. I basically had the motivation of, similar to Jen, my husband was like, just do it. Like, you're not going to have an opportunity to do it. And we're in a place financially where you can step away from your job. And it also was kind of lining up with when my daughter was starting in like a pre-K program, and I was navigating the leaving work in a hurry to try and get to some place to see a performance that she had, and that like guilt piece. And I really just wanted that flexibility to manage my time appropriately and spend it in the places that I wanted. I think in the corporate world, I was getting a little bogged down with some of the politics or the processes piece of it versus the actual doing the work and getting it out the door. And I am someone who just likes to like take something on and work until it's done. And so I would bring that home with me each night, and I needed to find a balance. And so for me, being a independent consultant gives me that balance that I need. As Jen said, it is scary, that first step of like, can I do it? And I talked to a few of my friends who actually had done it, used my network, which I think is important for anyone. Went through some of my old even business school friends who also were in corporate and then had recently started consulting, and not necessarily in the same field as me, but I was like picking their brain on, how did they decide to take the step, and what was the trigger, and what were some of their key learnings along the way, so that I could, think about those in advance before also encountering those issues later on. But I think for me, it's just, it gives me just such great flexibility, and I can choose to devote my time and energy in a place that I'm passionate about. And that's when I tend to perform the best, is when I'm actually excited about what I'm doing. And so you're getting to choose that as a consultant, which is important.
I love what you said about that you like to take something and see it through. That's a very important characteristic of an entrepreneur, seeing it through. So I'm glad you brought that up, because anybody that's listening or watching, if you decide you're going to do it, do it. Right? Susan, go ahead.
So I had over 2 decades as an administrator in nonprofits and human services. And now I work in finance, but I didn't find finance, it found me. So I entered the financial field, not as an economist or a financial planner, but as a social worker who was interested in attitudes and emotional reactions to money, because we know money is way more than currency. So our beliefs about our money impact our behaviors, which then determine our results with money. So as a social worker, I wanted to change that conversation around money and provide a different way of thinking about money. But there wasn't anything specific to that in the human service field that I was working in. And I had also approached other financial advisors to maybe suggest coming in as a back office support. And so that didn't work. And I'm really passionate about women's economic empowerment for many different reasons. So I was like, okay, you know what, maybe I just need to do this myself. And so hence transitioned over to the financial side, and then ended up partnering with Reuven, my associate, who founded the Power Forward Group, who's actually a recovering estate planning attorney. So hence, again, same experience, really nervous, do I give up this, income that I know is coming in every other week to transition to something that will have ebbs and flows? And so it's very scary. But the thing is, you know what? We will give ourselves all the excuses under the sun, sometimes to prevent from putting that one step forward, because it's like, oh, I'm not quite ready yet, or maybe I need a little more knowledge or information or additional resources. But you know what? You just have to do it. And from my perspective, I think often our inner critic is our worst enemy. That little voice that's always telling us, "Oh, are you sure about this? And what if you don't get paid? And oh, you don't really have enough knowledge to do that." So you gotta tell that little voice you got it, and you're taking it forward. The other thing is know your value and your own worth, because I come across a lot of women, and I understand, starting out your business new, you want to build up your clientele. And often we have a tendency to undervalue ourselves and not charge what we're worth just so we can get that client or customer. And then I hear stories, it's like, oh my God, my worst nightmare. And it's like, cut the cord. Because, if you don't value yourself, then why should anybody else? So it's really important to recognize your own value. And I think, just going back to what you'd also said earlier, Jasmine, it's, we have to look at, as we move forward, a failure is not a failure. It's a learning experience. And I think Thomas Edison said, I think he had 100 different trials before he finally invented the light bulb. And what he responded to was, he said, these were 100 situations that I was able to identify didn't work to create the light bulb. So I think, using that as a learning curve, because it just helps us, it's taking us a step forward to knowing, what we want to do. And hope, I think hope is, having hope opens the door for the future for you, Sam.
I love it. Yeah, business is science and faith. In so many ways, it is a lot about believing in yourself, right? Taking the step. And also what's interesting that I think we've all been talking about, that I want to impress upon everyone is, even if you have a great business idea, like, believe me, Jen knows, I always have about 12 billion ideas. So it's like, Jen, I have another idea. So, and I've always been like that, even if one idea doesn't work, maybe the next idea will work, so that if that idea didn't work, it doesn't mean it's a failure. It just means you're continuing to improve. So I want to go around and ask something that's important for female startups and for just general women business owners, which is networking. So, we are on Zoom, and we are on Facebook, and we are on LinkedIn, and we're on Instagram. I think my assistant's running that right now. I don't know. But, basically right now we're doing something that I've been preaching for a long time, which is virtual networking. Mm-hmm. So I just want to hear from each of you, networking when it comes to building your business, especially if you're a startup, is critical, right? Mm-hmm. We need to know how to network with each other. We need to know how to build relationships. So I want to go around and ask one tip that you would give for networking success. So I'm just going to start quickly. So I've been a LinkedIn author and trainer like a billion times over. And one thing that I always talk about in my training is people get like too hung up on using LinkedIn and LinkedIn Sales Navigator for cold calling, right? So then they get scared because it is scary. I've knocked on so many doors in my life. So the way that I would suggest to think about networking, and we'll just take LinkedIn as a simple example, is to instead think about whom you can network with that already serves the audience that you're going after. So think about networking with peers or complementary service providers, because they're much more willing to listen to you because you're not selling them anything. You're building a relationship. And that is how I've built and sustained my businesses. This is my third business in the last 15 years. So that's my tip. Jen, what would you say?
Again, building upon that, I would say, don't think of networking as cold calling, because it's not that anymore. It's building a relationship. And sometimes the best way to build a relationship is with people you already have at least a knowledgeable relationship with, whether that's a peer, whether it's a former coworker. And now's a great time right now to just reach out to those people and say, hey, you crossed my mind today. How are you doing? I'd love to catch up. It's completely non-threatening. It puts the ball in their court. I've used that technique a lot, and I would say almost always I get a response. It's how Molly and I got back in touch even. And, then when they get back in touch, you let them know what you're doing. You're curious about what they're doing. And right now, there are a lot of people out of work, so there are going to be a lot of people reaching out. One of the things I did too, even outside of LinkedIn, was I had friends that were also looking for employment and manifesting new ideas. And we had a standing happy hour where we just, chatted through and brainstormed. I had one friend I would take walks in Central Park with, and we brainstormed. And some of the leads that came out of those early conversations where we were just kicking around ideas were so helpful. And then, when we get back up and running again, look for the seminars, look for those women networking opportunities. I mean, that's what they're there for. And while you're there, don't be afraid to go up and shake a hand, or not shake a hand. Don't shake a hand anymore. Elbow bump, whatever it is. Jazz hands.
No, you do that.
But, ask for the contact information. That's the whole point of those things is, and that will expand your network. You'll get exposed to people you wouldn't see. And then, it's the compound effect. The more people you meet, the more they introduce you to their network, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Molly, what's your one tip?
Building upon that, I think it's this aspect of being proactive about it, in the sense of, not waiting until you're like, okay, I'm going to start my business right now, and so I need to start networking. Like, it's doing it well in advance. It should just, you need to, in essence, carve out time. It's sometimes people see networking as something like, I don't have time for. Just carve out whatever it is. Maybe it's an hour a week where you're dedicating time to, like, I'm going to reach out to like former colleagues or former professors or friends and family, and just say, like, be genuine. I want to, like, see how you're doing. I want to start talking to you. I want to, hear what's going on in your life. And then you gradually, like, start just talking about what's going on in your life and your thoughts of, like, I'm thinking about starting a business. And then you start talking about it. It helps formulate the idea. It helps the person think, like, oh, I know this person that I could connect you with. And that's how it happens. But if you wait too long to start doing it, it gets uncomfortable. You're like, oh, I don't really want to make that call because I, like, really just need their connection. You just need to carve out the time and be proactive in wanting to build those relationships, because as you're building out your business, you're going to need to know how to communicate and how to just, like, approach people and have conversation. And so it also helps you figure out your communication style and how you're going to engage with people that you either haven't spoken to, don't have a relationship with, or you are just, like, cold calling. So I think that really being proactive and carving out the time is important.
Okay, great. Susan, what do you have to say about networking?
Yeah, I mean, I think LinkedIn is a great place to build relationships. And I think also, looking at your existing relationships and how do you leverage them. So I think about, I've worked with nonprofits, and you always had a board of directors, but, especially just starting your business, you can have a board. And they can be your resource people. So as you've identified the goals that, you want to focus on to move you forward. So if an aspect of it is marketing, then you can leverage and reach out and say, can I ask you a couple of questions about this because I'm starting a business, and would you be willing to be on my board of directors for a couple of months? And we only meet one, and so then you're getting feedback from them, getting, you know, their expertise, and now you're not asking them to do the work for you, but you're tapping into the expertise and knowledge. So, and the other thing, when we do get back to, well, actually, you can use this right now. I love this. So when I, at networking events, and you can actually do it through the screen as well. I think of LinkedIn as a live resume. So, you know what, I give out business cards, but I always ask, is somebody on LinkedIn? Because straight away you can start to develop that relationship by being top of mind if you're connected. So I don't know, I'm just going to hold it up to the camera. So when you go,
it's not really coming in. Are you talking about the scanner, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Just,
so yeah, because you have the
people don't know about it.
Yeah, I'll just say it because you can't see your screen. So on LinkedIn, when you have your profile open, on the top there's a little box with 4 dots, and you press on that, and you can scan someone's LinkedIn profile, and you can connect with them. I can put that. We can put that in the chat box. But yeah, absolutely, and it's all about follow up, right? And ensuring that. So that's a great point. We don't have a lot of time, so I want to get right into the meaty questions. So in business, we need to plan for both the short and long term, which Jen was previously talking about. So with all these changes, stoppages, and we don't know when we're getting let out, and some of the industries are experiencing complete overturn and change. How does a woman in business plan for her business and her finances? And I'm not going to answer this. I'm going to go to the experts. Jen.
Okay. I'm going to say it again. I said it in your first question. It is completely okay to let go of a long-term plan right now. Trying a long-term plan is the equivalent of stumbling around in the dark at the moment. So you're not going to be behind. Everyone's in the same boat. So where you're going to succeed is in your ability to look at what you did have planned, pivot to your essentials right now, and focus your resources there. And then in parallel, set yourself up to be as nimble as you can be for the next 12 to 18 months. Empower your teams to be creative, think outside the box. There's a lot of momentum right now, and people's willingness to adapt, be resilient and innovative. Just think about what we've all lived through. So use those newly coveted skills to your advantage and your team's advantage. Your goals may still be relevant, but your path to getting to those goals may look very, very different. So be curious about what the possibilities are, apply them as necessary, but I would say your only job right now is to double down on your purpose, keep your lights on, keep your team motivated. If you can do that in the immediate future, all those other pieces are going to fall into place as your picture becomes clearer.
Thank you. Molly?
And I think speaking to kind of keeping the lights on is really important. And to do that, taking a look at your budget again, which I know I spoke to earlier, is just re-examining your expenses, re-examining your top line, but really taking the time to look at your budget bottoms up, each expense line, and really making sure it's important to continuing right now. I think another important thing is if you're not already digital, you got to become digital. We don't know how long this is going to last, but businesses that do have an online presence are still finding ways to survive and keep going, and just re-examining some of the way they have operated before. But having some sort of online presence will be key to the future. I think just the behaviors of individuals is going to change. The companies, that are thriving right now are the ones that are serving the essential needs, the basic needs, and figuring out how your service or product fits into that will be really important.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, obviously the online presence, what I do for a living, but more importantly, I was supposed to have Warrior Women in Business has events. So our big event at the Brand New Conference is now shelved, just so everybody who's listening knows. Unfortunately, I think we're going to be pushing this thing out to the fall. I'm very sad. I want to cry over it. But so, I had to pivot the business. And then yesterday I had a call with a potential client who has a global events business. And they've now launched 2 one e-commerce site and one social network. So, they want my help with something. But they're smart because they said, we know we're 6 months, we're not going to have any revenue. So we got to totally turn our business around, and you have to be that way. So thanks for bringing that up, Molly. Susan, what do you have to say about that planning?
Okay. Oh, I am unmuted. Okay. Just in terms of when I think about it, there are two options right now. I'm thinking, there's, okay, I have my plan and I can stay the course, or my plan's just blowing up. So when I say that, I'm looking at, if somebody didn't have that emergency fund, they don't have anything to liquidate in terms of operations, then they may need to start looking at some of those long-term monies, which I would never recommend in any other situation. But if people, right now, I like to say, we think about, or I love to use the term, or our team does, the F words of financial planning. And I don't mean the F word. So we have like this 3-bucket approach, which kind of we think about in terms of helping money identify helping people identify what they need money for. So there's like a focus bucket, a flexibility bucket, and a future bucket. And I totally agree, right now people are focused on the short term. But what I want to say is that, you know what, if you don't have to access future monies to keep the company going, then don't stay the course. I mean, the market has been around for more than 170 years, and we have bulls and bears, and it goes up and down. But the key to this is staying the course if you can, right?
Yeah.
So I hear all too often, people are like, oh, shall I try and take money out of my 401k? And it's like, well, have you got other monies someplace else? And no, just leave that, let it run its course. So I think, people are just so panicky because I also think about, if you have some of those extra monies right now, that it's also a good time to buy, because when we think about it, everything's on sale. Like, if we're looking for stuff in the kitchen, right? It's like, oh, I need a new fridge, but Lowe's are having a sale next week, so I can get a discount on that. But when it comes to our investments, we never think about that. We do the total opposite. So it's just helping people think about that. The market's done this for years. It comes up, it generally does 7% over the lifetime. So it's just, stay the course, and, this time too will pass.
I love it. That makes me feel comfortable, and it makes everybody feel comfortable. If the market's been around so long, we shouldn't all jump like it's a fire. So thank you, Susan. Last question before we go to audience Q&A. So please make it short, because I want to hear what the audience has to say. So what would each of you say to you is a warrior woman in business at this time? One thing, just one thing that pops to your head.
Well, I'm going to say 2 words: empower and encourage. We have to let go of these old ideas of doing it all and competing with one another right now. There's so much opportunity to go around, and women are wonderful collaborators, innovators, and great at just getting things done. Look at the leaders who manage the crisis best. They're all women. So I think now is our time to shine in the world, and we can help each other do it.
Thank you very much, Jen. Molly?
Similar advice here is it's a time to stick together as a community and figure out a path to moving forward collectively and supporting each other along the way. And I think too, there's this quote I'm going to read that's from my daughter's room, but it says, it's no use going back to yesterday because I was a different person then. And it's from Alice in Wonderland. And it's like, everyone is different now. We've all been in this unknown journey that we've been experiencing. No one knows the right or wrong way to deal with the pandemic, but we are all navigating through and we're helping each other along the way. And so I think encouraging people to just continue on that path forward together will be important.
Thank you. Susan.
Yeah, I think we're all saying the same thing. You know, we're navigating this new normal together. We're locking arms, obviously virtually, and you know, trying to help one another in ways that we can, because the world is vastly different. So I think, you know, the more we do that, the more we'll feel connected. But I think, you know, it's just choosing to see opportunities in the choices that you have. So even when they're not our choice, even when they're not the choices you want, okay? Surround yourself with positive and motivated people, and choosing to connect to your own resilience. We're much more resilient than we realize, and focusing on what is right in your life, not what is wrong.
I love it. Yeah. Well, thank you. That's amazing. So we're going to be going to audience Q&A. I'm just waiting for those to come in. But before we go there, just a couple of announcements. So at the end of Q&A, Molly, my assistant, will be putting in 2 links into the Q&A form in Facebook. So one is a document link for any of you that are interested. So we are, like Susan said, everything is on sale. So we are giving away our time. So you'll feel free to use the form to book a free consult with all of us or any one of us. So Molly will be putting that in the form shortly. As well, one other thing that I'm very excited about is on Friday. Today's Wednesday, right? I don't know. Being a stay-at-home, I have no idea what day it is anymore. But anyways, on Friday, we have a professional dancer as part of our Warrior Women in Business Entertainment series. Anybody that knows me, I'm a musician and I love the arts. So we generally bring in the arts to our physical events. So instead, we're doing them online. And on Friday of this week at 5:30, we are hosting a professional ballet dancer who's going to be doing a mixed dance lesson for beginners, which is really, really, really cool. So she's got a killer playlist. So that's going to be available as well. And Molly will be sharing that in the box. I'm just waiting for Molly to get back to us with any Q&A. Let me just check here in the chat box to see how we're doing. Okay, I think she is checking in shortly here. So while we're waiting for Molly, any other, before we get into questions, any other kind of trailing advice that you think you've left on the table that you want to share to women right now and how they're feeling and moving forward, Jen?
You know, I would just say again, you know, trust your instincts, use what you've learned in your life to date. You know, again, women instinctively know how to organize themselves. They know how to get things done. But I think we're not great at what Susan said, knowing our value and betting on ourselves. So use this time. Again, you got nothing to lose. So just don't be afraid to take that first step. And if you bet on yourself, I guarantee, you know, a year from now, you're going to be so grateful you did it.
Yeah, betting on yourself. I love it. I got a couple of questions here, so I'm going to jump into them. So a woman, Debbie, asked, if I want to start my own business, where is the best starting point? So I don't know if it's what's the best starting point or where is the best starting point, but I will tell you what I think, and then I'll just go around. You have to, I mean, I do branding. So, you know, for me, it's about focus. And, you know, the best starting point is for you to determine which way you want to go to. You know, are you going to do B2C? Are you going to do B2B? Is it online business? Is it an offline business? And then in that, you have to be realistic based on what is your actual experience in life. Because generally the way businesses start is someone has some experience in something, and then they lead into doing that on their own. So that's my 2 cents. Jen?
I would say same thing, know your purpose. That's really, you know, if you clearly define your purpose, then you're going to understand where you need to focus your efforts. And if you're asking just from a total practicality standpoint, honest to God, what I did when I first decided that I wanted to create my own business is I Googled how to create a business. It's amazing what will come up. So don't be afraid of the Google machine. And ask other women who have started businesses. You've got to know people in your network that have done it. Just, get on the phone with them, like Susan and Molly said, and just say, hey, how'd you do it? People love talking about that stuff. So.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Molly, what do you have to say on that one?
I think it's as you're coming up with your idea of what type of business you have, like really figuring out what are you trying to solve, and is what you're trying to solve meaningful, and who is it meaningful to? And then that will help you narrow it down to who your audience is and who your customer is. And then you can see, like, did I just funnel down to like my 5 closest best friends, or did I funnel down to just my neighborhood, or did I funnel to something that can be like, there's universal demand amongst the United States or internationally? You really have to understand, like, what are you trying to solve and who is it going to help? And that in all honesty will help you then formulate kind of what could your potential revenue stream look like by what audience you're capturing and how big they are.
Yes, that's extremely important, right, Molly? I mean, yep. Also, I just want to dovetail off that for a second, Molly. So any advice on choosing, like, let's say you want to start a clothing business, right? Mm-hmm. Just doesn't matter. So any advice on if you're a fashionista, you want to start a clothing business, any advice on how you go about choosing what quadrant you're going to go after in terms of luxury brand, mass brand? Do you have any advice on that? Because I know I get that question a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like doing research and understanding within each of those kind of quadrants, where is there white space? So if you're going after and you're saying, I want to be mass market and I want to be just like Zara, like that's going to be hard to replicate. But are you solving something that Zara doesn't already do? Like, are you taking the Zara, but you're making it like 100% sustainable at the same price point and being able to deliver like within a certain cadence? Like, you really have to understand that piece of what is it you want to solve, and then you can start narrowing down like how you're going to differentiate yourself, because you really need to understand who the competition is to see if there's even a market for you, and you don't want to just copycat something that is out there. So I think you may have a brilliant idea and it fits within, let's say, the luxury world. Well, then how are you going to differentiate yourself there? And that's how you'll start piecing together, I'm going to use certain fabrications, or I'm going to have it made in the USA, or I'm going to focus on kind of only certain, certain prints or patterns, and kind of like differentiate there. It's really finding how you become kind of new and you can have a new customer base.
Thank you so much. Susan.
Oops. Oh, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I think, I can't add too much more to what Jen and Molly and you have said, but I think it's knowing what value you're bringing. Sometimes I hear clients who are talking about potential businesses are saying, I think there's a huge need for, and it's like, well, why do you think there's a need for that? I mean, it's just confirming that it's not you thinking what people need, and that there is an actual need out there for that. And I think, again, tapping into, your resources that are on LinkedIn and, getting information there.
Okay, good. We have two other questions. So Blake said, thanks so much for the great points and positive advice. You are welcome. Lessons can come from failures or missteps too. Any examples of things that didn't work out? Oh my God, please. Give me a break. Or you'd have done differently when starting out and what you learned from it. So I'm going to start. I'm going to say that I was actually interviewed on this podcast, I don't know, pretty recently. It was so cool. It was about perfectionists. And that's like, everybody I know is a perfectionist. And, we talked about that. We talked about the problem of being a perfectionist sometimes, and that can get you in trouble. So I would say that one of the keys is that I've learned is really trusting yourself. That's the key, because a lot of times you're so ready to get someone else's help, but you have to figure out if you really need their help yet, or if they are the right person. So to my point on the call that I had yesterday with this company, the guy said to me, oh, I've hired like 20 SEO people and they pretty much just ripped me off. And I'm like, I know. And he said, what do you mean? I said, that's how people end up always hiring me, is because they just impulsively went out and saw this shiny object. So I would say, my advice would be just to really think about it and get to know whether it's like Molly was talking about, figuring out what direction you want to go with your business, validate it, whether you want to hire somebody, ask other people that have hired that person. So that would be my advice. Jen.
I think the biggest thing, and it's what Susan said earlier, is understanding and knowing your value. If I could go backwards in time and think about how much I undervalued myself, probably in the first year and a half of my business, in terms of what I was charging, in terms of clients I was willing to take on that were a huge amount of time and really no intrinsic value to my business or my experience. So, your time is money and your talent is important. And, I know we're all scared when we first start out and you think, gosh, if I don't take this client, am I walking away from business? But, is it good business? You have to ask yourself that question. Is it worth your time? Is it worth your money? If money was no object, would this still be something you'd be interested in doing? So if it either needs to be building your business financially, or it needs to be building your business in a way that is adding tools to your toolkit. So you're learning something from it, or you're getting a network opportunity from it. So I think it's okay to, for example, barter or discount, as long as you're getting something, equally valuable in return, and you're willing to do that. But do not undersell yourself or undervalue yourself.
Thank you, Jen. That's a big one in my 15 years of business. Huge. It's too easy to say, yeah, I'll do this for you and you do this for me, and then you never get off that starting block of making money. Molly, go ahead. Mistakes.
I would say, very similar to what Jen just said of the value piece, and Susan said earlier, is I think you get intimidated going out there when someone asks you, like, what is your rate? And you've kind of done the math based on your experience and your historical salary to get to what you feel is like an appropriate rate hourly. And then someone comes back and is like, I can, just offer you half as much and that's it. They don't even want a discussion. It's just what their budget is. And you kind of having to take that moment to say like, am I going to do it for that, even though I'm worth something higher? And I think that's the hardest part, in all honesty. I don't want to be repetitive, but I do think that is a lot of being an entrepreneur and being a consultant and like trying to navigate that water. And just know you have a strong background. You're the expert there. They're coming to you because you are the expert and you have something that they can't do internally, and like really remembering that and reinforcing that in your mind as you're having those negotiations, because they haven't, walked in your steps and seen all of your leadership roles along the way and kind of like the work that you've done and what your reputation is. So figuring out ways to kind of reinforce your value through kind of recommendations or your prior work relationships and is also something you can do, but don't sell yourself short. It's not worth it.
Definitely not worth it. Thank you, Molly. Susan? Let's see if I can unmute you.
One of these.
Oh, you're good.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to reiterate the same thing, because that was one of the things that I had a client that I took on and I had lowballed, and he was really rude, really obnoxious. And it took me a couple of months because, again, I was afraid, oh, if, and he was a fairly big client. But I think the lesson that I took away from that, and it's the same as both Molly and Jen are saying, it's kind of, number one, I've got to have better clients than this. I'm so much more deserving of, at least having somebody who respects what you do. So he clearly didn't value what I did. And that took me a couple of months to catch on to that. So I think, it's identifying, helping the client understand the value that you're bringing to them. How are you going to change their life? And I think once we help them understand that then, the value of working with me is, and I say, help you recognize your relationship and understand and recognize your relationship with money, is that's going to change your life. And the price is what the price is. This isn't me on sale. So if you want something cheaper, then you don't value what I do because you don't see the difference in what I do compared to somebody else. So I think, that's, yeah.
Thank you. And that, I see that in different industries, Susan. I love that you talked about that in terms of people undervaluing the efforts and work of certain professionals. So I think it's a service to each one of you to be able to own your value and really stand by it. So it looks like we have one more question. Is it better to target a larger market or a smaller market? I'll just go around the horn. Jen.
I think my personal opinion is to target a smaller market. I think I'm a big proponent on focus. So focus on a very specific talent you have, a very specific need you fulfill, and be the expert in that. Because if you are the expert in that, then the reality is they can't go out and find somebody else at a discount rate. There are not a lot of people that do what you do. You're solving a need. And if you're very focused on that, you're going to find more success in that. It's scary because it feels like you're narrowing your opportunity, but in a lot of ways, you're creating opportunity. And then once you become the resident expert in that, it's going to be word of mouth that this is the person to hire for this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Molly, what do you think?
I'm in a similar camp of start smaller, and you can build to larger through time. But if you start to target too much at once, you're not going to be able to excel in all of it. You'll be able to excel at like one piece of it, and then the customer won't get what they've kind of asked for, what the service is or what the product is, because your focus is like everywhere. So start small, become an expert there, and then you can expand your business either through word of mouth, like Jen said, or you can, if you're product based, you would add more products, or you could even add more services along the way. You could open up offices or locations in different markets. You can start gradually expanding that way, but you want to kind of like test it in a smaller market. And really that gives you time too to kind of adjust what your strategy is, adjust what your service or product are based on the customer's reactions to it, versus going large and not hitting all those marks initially. It's going to cost you a lot more to kind of backpedal and fix that than if you were starting small and had those key learnings to then grow.
Yeah, well, I'll just say one quick thing on that. So especially if you're a startup and you're not, well funded and you're getting to funding, you want to start with a small market because the cost to market will be much smaller. So I can't impress that enough on people that are like, I want to market in 5 different cities in 20 different countries. I'm like, no. Start with one and learn from it. Go ahead, Susan. You have something to say here?
I don't think I can add much more to that in terms of, I know Jen had mentioned initially, when you're starting and you're looking at your business focus, that's when you should be tying in. Also, as part of that strategy, okay, what am I providing and how many people do I want to target based on how much money you want to earn over the next 3 years. So generally if I want to earn, I guess 100,000 in my first year, how many people do I need to touch based on? So it's kind of a tie-in, looking at not taking on too much for yourself, but also tying it into, kind of the budget that you've set for yourself in terms of what you want to earn.
Right. So thank you. I mean, it has to do with all of what we were talking about, right? It isn't just where you're going to market, who's your customers, there a demand. It's also looking at the money that you have and the money that you can spend and having a smart outlook. So a couple things we're going to wrap up, but a couple things I want to announce before I let these awesome ladies go. So first of all, anybody that did tune in today, we want to thank you. We know there's about 1.5 million Zoom calls going on every second now. So if you did spend an hour with us, God bless you, and we thank you. So just a couple of quick announcements. Again, this is Warrior Women in Business. We have a Facebook page, a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group. And so if you have further questions, comments, you can put them into the groups and people can help you. So please do that. A couple of events, again, I just wanted to announce here. So one is, we've all said, hey, you know what? We're going to give our time to anybody that wants it, whether you're just starting a business, you're thinking about starting a business, you've been in business and you're really upset right now for any reason. Molly, my assistant, has put a form into Facebook that you can fill out and choose a consult, and we'll get back to you and schedule that with you, no charge. The second thing is on Friday, again, we are having on Warrior Women in Business, a dance class. So please attend. It's for anybody. Even if you just stink at dancing, that's even more reason for you to show up. And dancing, in this time of staying home, moving around and connecting with other people will make you so much happier, which will in turn help your business. So there's some business advice. Please dance. And then next week, I just want to make a pre-announcement. Next week, I am very excited. We have a panel called How to Look Great on Zoom. So today we look okay, but next week we're going to look amazing. So we have a celebrity hairstylist, a celebrity makeup artist, and then a top clothing stylist that I work with. And they're going to actually be doing live demos for us. So it's going to be super fun. Same time, same channel every week. So again, I want to thank Jen so much for coming on, sharing her wisdom and expertise. Molly the same, and Susan the same. And we look forward to answering your questions and helping to grow your businesses. So I think we're going to be signing out. Thank you so much, everyone.